So we've been talking about the attention economy, and Beck, you've done some really interesting work that's rooted in something called attention restoration theory that I think is really relevant. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Sure. So, Carrie, right this second, you are paying attention to me, and that kind of attention doesn't last forever. So attention restoration theory is a theory that comes out of environmental psychology that explains how our attention depletes over time when we're in a demanding environment. And this video is actually a demanding environment, and so is this interview. So there's a limit to how much attention you can pay in a day. And when that attention fatigues, you can get irritable and have poor self-control, feel stressed out, even go into fight or flight.
So does this explain why around 4:30, if I'm working straight through,
Yes.
especially with cognitively demanding tasks all day long, I feel fried sometimes, really
Absolutely.
exhausted.
And it doesn't have to be even cognitively demanding. It could be something that you're enjoying or you feel really in flow. Your attention still depletes. Our attention kind of works in two different modes. You could think of it in a lot of ways. You could think of it like a flashlight where you have a broad attention versus a narrow attention. You could think of attention where you have sort of an internal attention versus an external attention. But attention restoration theory thinks about attention as sort of a effortful attention, this kind of attention, and an effortless attention. And in this theory, there are these things called restorative environments. Restorative environments are places you can go that restore your attention. So it's sort of a strategy for having more agency in the digital economy.
So that effortless attention, is that what we want to do when we go into those more restorative environments? Is that what we're tapping into?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So restorative environments have 4 different qualities. It's important when you think about these qualities to know that they need to all happen at the same time. So the first quality is that they're away from a demanding environment. So just getting away from the demanding environment is the first thing you need to do. And you don't have to physically get away, but it's sort of the best if you can.
So if I take a break, which I sometimes do, from my computer and I go out to the beautiful sunken garden outside my office, would that be an example of living out that first
principle? Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a great example. Actually, nature in general is a very restorative environment. It's where sort of the theory originated was in environmental psychology, where there's a lot of focus on nature. So that's the first one, is just to get away from the demanding environment. The second is to go to a place that's compatible with restoration. So the second quality is called compatibility. So compatible is a lot of these things are a little tricky. Compatible is tricky, but it just means that you're going to a place that allows for you to be restored there. So think about that sunken garden that you mentioned. If you were to go there, it's sort of designed for people to go there. But what if the gates of Radcliffe were all locked and you kind of like scaled one of the fences to get in there? It wouldn't be compatible with restoration at that point because you're not supposed to be there. So for the second thing is for it to be compatible.
So because I'm not supposed to be there in this counter example, cognitively, I'm worried, so I'm not able to fully relax. Would it also be incompatible if I got to the sunken garden and rather than a relaxing setting that's quiet and peaceful, there's some kind of party going on, like some kind of program decided they were going to throw a birthday party for a colleague or a retirement party, and it was very loud and noisy and all kinds of things going on.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. You're really getting it. So the third quality is something called extent. And this is another one of those words that's like, what does that even mean? But it essentially means that there's a Goldilocks zone to our ability to be kind of like engaged in an environment, but also not overwhelmed by it. So you wouldn't want to go to a place where you just felt bored. But you also wouldn't want to go to a place that had so much to do that you felt overwhelmed by the number of options. It's really interesting when they do studies of how we perceive an environment. Open range, like open sky and open range, stresses us out. And also really dense, kind of jungly situation stresses us out. We want a little bit of mystery, but we also need some options.
So it needs to be that sweet spot, so you don't feel kind of overwhelmed or overstimulated on the one hand, but you're also not like about to fall asleep on the other.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last one, and it's just sort of the stickiest and most interesting one, is something called soft fascination. And soft fascination is actually a great example would be if you're sitting by a campfire and just sort of staring at the fire going. It's just this effortless attending to something. It's not riveting, but it doesn't, you don't have to actually pay attention to look at it. You just sort of like kind of want to just sort of partake of whatever it is.
So it's not the situation where you go to the Arboretum, for example, and you're tasked with drawing a flower that you see, because that requires a lot, maybe hard attention or hard fascination. Stop laughing at me, Emily Weinstein.
It's very interesting. We just taught a class and we did a little bit of playing around with soft fascination. One of the students thought that she was doing it wrong because she was really interested in this fern that she was looking at. And with that student curiosity, she was just like, what is this? I'm going to take a picture. I want to look this up. What kind of plant is it? And she wasn't doing it wrong, actually. So you can go to a place. Now, if you felt, this is sort of where compatibility comes in. If you felt overwhelmed or stressed out drawing, then
I see.
But if you were just sort of in a space and you actually wanted to attend to something just by kind of sketching it, that would totally be fine. It's about resting the demanding attention, the effortful attention that you pay. And it's really, if you just think of it as a muscle, you're resting it so it can restore. That's all you're doing. And the soft fascination, along with these other things, is just sort of this like condition that allows for that to happen.
Yeah, I kind of am hearing it as like you're absorbed, but in a low stakes way.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so when you are in a space where you've got all four of those conditions, your attention, you could think of it as just a cup. It just fills back up. At first, your mind clears. Then your directed attention restores. And then finally you get to a place, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where you just feel kind of reflective and like you have a better perspective on things. And that's sort of a sense that you're kind of there. Now, I want to point out that like there are a lot of different ways that we can do this, especially if we're not near nature. It can be kind of, it can be kind of ideal to just be able to go walk into the sunken garden, to be honest, right? And so there are just, honestly, depending on, where your environment is, what your neurology is, like you could just go to a window and just gaze out the window for a little while. Taking a 5-minute break can do a lot. But it's really, I think, framing that this is something that happens to us, even just knowing it, kind of like the thinking traps, just being able to know that this happens and then that there are some things that we can do about it can be really powerful.
Can I ask you a provocative question?
Yeah.
Is it possible to restore your attention? Can those 4 conditions be met with technology?
I think that one of the really interesting debates inside this field is that it's so focused on nature. I think that there's some open questions around how do others affect our restorative experience, and how does tech affect our restorative experience? I think that there is a way. For example, let's say that you go on a walk and you decide to use your phone as a tool to take some macro photography. That can enable an attending that will help. So I personally think that it's worth experimenting with. What's it like to just leave your phone on your desk while you go down there? What's it like to put it in Do Not Disturb? And